A papal procession moves solemnly through medieval Rome. The streets are packed. Bells ring. Incense burns. The Pope God's representative on earth rides forward in full regalia. And suddenly, in front of thousands, the Pope goes into labor. A newborn falls to the ground. The crowd erupts in horror. Gods freeze. The clergy recoil. A Pope, who is secretly a woman. For centuries, Europe whispered about this moment. A moment supposedly so scandalous that the Church hid it from its own history books. A moment that became known as the legend of Pope Joan, or, as later storytellers called her, the pregnant Pope. But here's the twist. The more historians studied the story, the more they found. Nothing. No papal record. No contemporary report. No trace of a disaster that should have shaken Christendom to its core. Yet the legend persisted. It appeared in manuscripts, sermons, artworks, satire, and even in early printed books. It survived for almost 1,000 years. So how did a story with no evidence become one of the most enduring scandals in medieval Europe? Why did people believe it? Who first wrote it down? And what does the legend really reveal about politics, faith, and fear in the Middle Ages? Today, we uncover the truth behind the myth and the real history that kept the legend alive. The earliest known written version of the story appears not in papal archives, not in Roman historical chronicles, but in a brief, cryptic passage written around the 1250s, a full 400 years after the supposed event. The author was Jean de Mali, a Dominican friar from Metz. In his work Chronicle Universalis, he describes, almost casually, a female cleric who, disguised as a man, became pope and was discovered only when she gave birth during a procession. This is the oldest written mention. There is no known reference earlier than this. Not in the 9th century, not in the 10th, not in the 11th or 12th. And Jean de Mailly doesn't give a name. He doesn't give a date. He doesn't give a detailed narrative, just a shocking anecdote. A generation later, the story explodes across Europe. Around 1278, a Dominican scholar named Martin of O, also known as Martinus Palones, writes his Chronicon Pontificam et Imperatorum, a popular medieval chronicle of popes and emperors. Martin gives the legend its full shape. He places the event around 855 to 858 CE, between the papacies of Leo IV and Benedict III. He gives the female pope a name and a backstory. A brilliant young woman who studied in Athens, disguised herself as a man, rose through the church hierarchy, and was elected pope. He adds the dramatic episode of childbirth in the streets of Rome. He even names the street, the Via Sacra. But here's what modern historians discovered. Martin's chronology is off. Records show Leo IV died in 855, and Benedict III was elected the same year. There is no gap, no room for an extra pope. Also, Martin served in the papal court. He had access to official papal archives. He should have known the succession. So why did he include the story? Many historians argue he'd likely copied it from oral rumor or satirical tradition, not from official documentation. To understand the legend's power, we must understand medieval Europe. The Church faced rising criticism over corruption, political power, and the behavior of certain popes during the Middle Ages. Satire became a powerful weapon. Stories that mocked the Church, even outrageous ones, spread quickly. The idea of a woman secretly becoming pope spoke to several medieval anxieties. Fear of deception and disguise, anxieties about female authority, criticism of papal arrogance, suspicion about Rome's secrecy. The legend was repeated in sermons, chronicles, commentaries, and even in 5th century woodcut prints. It became a moral tale, a political weapon, and a piece of folklore all at once. Starting in the 16th century, Catholic scholars began examining the story critically. Onofrio Panbino, a papal historian, carefully reviewed papal records and showed no pope was missing from the 9th century succession. Later, Jesuit scholar Cardinal Robert Bellarmine declared the tale a fable. Modern historians overwhelmingly agree. No contemporary 9th century document mentions a female pope. No Roman chronicle records her election or death. The official papal lists contain no gap. The earliest story appears only in the 13th century, long after the event supposedly happened. The consensus: Pope Joan never existed, but the story's survival tells us something important. The pregnant pope was never a real person, but she became a real symbol. Her legend reveals the power of rumor in a world without mass literacy, the vulnerability of institutions during political turmoil, and how myths can outlive the facts that disprove them. In Renaissance Europe, the story was used to attack the papacy. In medieval sermons, it became a warning about sin and pride. In early printed books, it was repeated simply because it was dramatic. Over time, the legend of Pope Joan became larger than the truth, a mirror reflecting what people feared, not what actually happened. Today, historians view the tale as one of the most fascinating examples of how powerful storytelling can reshape the memory of an entire civilization. And that may be the real scandal that Elegant, born 4 centuries late, could overshadow the truth for nearly 1,000 years. In history, the most shocking stories are often the ones people felt were true, not the ones that actually happened.